The synagogue in Capernaum was alive with murmurs. The room was filled with the familiar smells of incense and dust, the walls echoing with the soft rustling of robes as men gathered for the Sabbath prayers. But there was something different today, an unsettling feeling that seemed to creep into the air like a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of their vision. Then, as the scroll was being opened, a sudden disturbance shattered the moment. A man no one had noticed him before stood up in the middle of the congregation. His eyes were wide, unblinking, as if something deep inside him had been stirred to life. He looked at no one in particular, but his presence alone seemed to draw the room's attention. He was not a figure of power or importance, just another face among many until the thing inside him revealed itself. His lips trembled at first, then twisted into a grimace. The air thickened. A voice, dark and unnatural, broke through his trembling form, sounding like a dozen voices layered upon each other. It came from deep within his chest, a low growl at first, then rising into an accusing, mocking hiss. "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth?" The words felt like ice cutting through the room, sending a chill through the crowd. "Have you come to destroy us?" The voice laughed, sharp and bitter, carrying the weight of ages. "I know who you are, the Holy One of God." The words hung in the air, suffocating, as if the very name of Jesus caused the room to tremble. It was not the voice of a man speaking, but something far more sinister, something ancient and evil. The man's eyes were locked onto Jesus now, but they were no longer his own. They were the eyes of something else, something that had taken possession of him, something that had waited for this moment. For a brief second, there was silence. The people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, eyes darting from the man to Jesus. Fear crept into their hearts. Was it madness, or was something much darker at play here? Jesus, standing in the center of the room, met the demonic gaze without flinching. His expression was not one of fear or hesitation, but of quiet authority. There was no panic in his voice when he spoke. "Be quiet," he commanded sharply, his voice cutting through the air like a sword. The authority in his words was undeniable, like the very heavens themselves had spoken. The demon who had taunted and provoked the people with its malicious voice suddenly recoiled, as though struck by an invisible force. But the demon was not going to release its grip so easily. The man's body tensed, his chest heaving with violent breaths, his face contorted in pain, and his mouth stretched wide in a silent scream. The air grew heavy with the stench of something foul, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop, the atmosphere thick with oppression. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, creeping along the edges of the room, watching the struggle unfold. And then, with a sudden terrifying force, the man's body spasmed violently, his back arched, and his limbs jerked out of control. His eyes rolled back in his head, revealing only the whites, as if the soul trapped inside him was fighting against the force that was consuming it. The crowd gasped in horror, some of them instinctively backing away, others too stunned to move. A shriek, a terrible, unearthly shriek ripped through the synagogue. It was the kind of sound that made the blood freeze in your veins, the sound of something deeply, irrevocably evil being torn away. The demon was being driven out, but it was not going without a fight. The man's body jerked and twisted as if being torn in two. The shriek continued, building in intensity, reverberating off the stone walls, shaking the very foundations of the building. It was the sound of a tortured soul being ripped from its vessel, the cry of something condemned to leave. In that moment, the temperature in the room plummeted. A coldness so sharp it felt like needles on the skin filled the space. The shadows seemed to lengthen and twist, as if recoiling from the power of Jesus standing at the center of the storm. The evil force that had tormented the man now thrashed in futile resistance, but it was no match for the command of the Son of God. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the shrieking stopped. The man's body collapsed to the ground, limp and lifeless, as though a great weight had been lifted from him. His chest heaved with gasping breaths as he struggled to regain his senses. The twisted, contorted expression on his face began to soften, his eyes fluttering as if waking from a terrible dream. He looked around, confused, disoriented, not sure where he was or what had just happened. The room was still. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and a strange, eerie calm settled over the crowd. It was as if they had all just experienced something too incredible, too terrifying, to fully grasp. The man lay there, trembling, but now free from the darkness that had held him captive. The people around him slowly began to murmur, voices trembling with fear and awe. "What is this?" someone whispered. "Who is this man?" The words of the demon still echoed in their minds. "The Holy One of God." But the power in Jesus' voice, his simple, commanding authority, had shattered that evil presence in a single moment. They could not deny what they had witnessed. One of the men, his face pale, his voice trembling, said, "This is new, this teaching. And with authority." His voice caught in his throat. Even the demons obey him. It was the beginning of something they could not yet understand. The darkness had been cast out, but in its wake, something even greater had revealed itself. The very power of God was present in that room, and the people who witnessed it would never be the same.
Enjoyed the content? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more awesome videos your way. Don't forget to click the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.